The chatbot demo may look impressive. A user types a question, the system answers, and everyone in the meeting sees the potential. But when the business asks for security, repeatability, logging, workflow integration, and reliable answers across departments, the chat window is not enough. The chatbot is not the product. The reusable AI capability behind it is the product. Businesses confuse AI assistants and chatbots for a simple reason. The first thing they see is usually the interface. They see a chat window. They type a question, they get an answer, so naturally they describe the whole system as a chatbot. That is understandable, but it is also where many enterprise AI projects start heading in the wrong direction. The visible experience is not the whole system. It is just the part the user touches. Think about a traditional business application. A customer service portal is not the database. A dashboard is not the accounting system. A mobile app is not the supply chain platform. Those are interfaces. They expose business capabilities that live somewhere else. The same principle applies to AI. A chatbot may be the front door, but the important question is, what is behind the door? Is the chatbot just sending a user's question to a model and hoping the answer sounds reasonable? Or is it calling a defined capability that knows what task it is performing, what data it may use, what business rules apply, what output structure is expected, and what needs to be logged? Those are very different systems. The first one is a conversational demo. The second one is the beginning of an enterprise AI capability. This distinction matters because businesses do not usually fail at AI because the chat window looked bad. They fail because the system behind the chat window was not designed for production. No one defined the task clearly. No one separated generic language generation from business rules. No one decided which documents were authoritative. No one built a permission model. No one captured feedback in a way that improved the system. No one asked what happens when the answer is incomplete, outdated, or risky. The user saw a chatbot, but the organization needed an assistant capability. That is the real disconnect. A chatbot can be useful, but if the business treats the chatbot as the system instead of treating it as one interface over a reusable back-end capability, the project becomes fragile very quickly. The better approach is to separate the concepts. The interface is how people interact. The capability is what the system can reliably do. The business value comes from the capability. A chatbot is a conversational user interface. That is the cleanest definition. It accepts conversational input, it returns conversational output. It may maintain some chat history. It may ask follow-up questions. It may route requests to tools, APIs, documents, or business systems. But the chatbot itself is not automatically the intelligence. It is a way to interact with intelligence. That distinction sounds small, but architecturally it is huge. A chatbot can be connected to a weak backend or a strong backend. In a weak design, the chatbot is mostly a prompt wrapper. The user asks a question, the prompt is assembled, the model responds, and the answer is shown. That may be fine for a demo, a low-risk internal helper, or a prototype, but it is not enough for serious business use. In a strong design, the chatbot is one interface that calls well-defined capabilities. For example, a user might ask, "Can you review this vendor contract and identify renewal risks?" A weak chatbot might send the contract text to a model and ask for risks. A stronger enterprise system would call a specific capability, maybe named Assess Contract Renewal Risk. That capability would have defined inputs such as contract text, vendor metadata, renewal date, payment terms, business unit, and risk criteria. It would have defined outputs such as risk category, contributing factors, missing information, recommended review steps, confidence level, and source references. It would enforce permissions outside the prompt. It would log the request. It would preserve the result for audit or review. It might require legal approval before any external communication is drafted or sent. The chatbot did not create that discipline. The back-end capability did. That is why saying we need a chatbot is usually the wrong starting point. The better question is, what business capability do we want users to access conversationally? That question changes the design. Instead of starting with the chat window, you start with the work. What task needs to be performed? Who owns the task? What information is allowed? What output is useful? What does a good answer look like? What happens when confidence is low? What must be reviewed by a human? Once those answers are clear, a chatbot may be a very good interface, but it should not be confused with the assistant capability itself. A custom AI assistant capability is a reusable business function that applies AI to AI to a specific task inside a controlled system. That is different from a generic prompt. It is different from an open-ended chat experience, and it is different from a one-off automation script. A capability has a job. It might summarize a document for a specific audience. It might classify a support ticket. It might extract invoice terms. It might answer an HR policy question from approved documents. It might draft a response using company tone, rules, and workflow constraints. It might compare a purchase order against an invoice and identify discrepancies. The key is that the capability is defined before the interface is chosen. A good capability has explicit inputs. It has structured outputs. It has validation. It has permissions. It has logging. It has failure behavior. It has a business owner. It has a technical owner. And it can be improved over time. This is where domain-driven design becomes useful. Most assistant capabilities should be organized around business domains because different departments have different terminology, rules, risks, documents, workflows, and approval requirements. IT support does not think like HR. HR does not think like finance. Finance does not think like operations. Operations does not think like compliance. Each domain needs its own capability library. But some capabilities apply across multiple departments. Summarize a document, extract key entities, classify a document type, draft a professional response, compare two documents, generate a checklist, search approved knowledge sources. Those common capabilities should not be rebuilt separately inside every department. They should live in a shared common capability library. Then, domain-specific libraries can call them and add department-specific rules, context, and constraints. That gives you the best of both worlds. Common capabilities are reused. Domain capabilities are specialized. This is how enterprise AI avoids two common mistakes. The first mistake is building one giant generic assistant that tries to do everything for everyone. That usually becomes vague, hard to own, and hard to govern. The second mistake is letting every department build its own disconnected AI tools. That creates duplication, inconsistent behavior, and higher long-term maintenance cost. A capability-first architecture avoids both problems. It gives the business reusable AI building blocks. It gives IT a maintainable architecture, and it gives future interfaces something stable to call. Reusability is where the economics of enterprise AI start to make sense. The first AI capability is often the hardest, not because the task is always complicated, but because the organization is building the pattern. It has to decide how to connect to data, how to handle permissions, how to call the model, how to structure the output, how to log usage, how to capture feedback, how to test, how to deploy, how to explain results, how to move from prototype to MVP to production. That first capability teaches the organization how serious AI systems should be built. But once that pattern exists, The second capability should be easier. The third should be easier again. The architecture, logging model, security approach, deployment pipeline, API layer, interface patterns, and feedback process can all be reused. That is why the goal should not be a single chatbot. The goal should be a growing library of reusable AI assistant capabilities. A company might start with one IT support capability, such as ticket classification, then add ticket summarization, then suggested troubleshooting steps, then draft user responses, then recurring issue detection. Some of those capabilities may be available through a web application. Some may be available in Teams. Some may be called by Power Automate. Some may later be exposed through a chatbot. Eventually, if the capabilities are stable and governed, some may become safe for agent orchestration. But the business did not rebuild the intelligence for every interface. It reused the same capability engine. That matters because interfaces change. Today, the preferred interface may be a web app. Tomorrow, it may be Teams. For a specific workflow, it may be Power Apps. For another, it may be chat. For automation, it may be an API. For future systems, it may be an AI agent. If every interface has its own logic, the organization creates chaos. The same business rule gets implemented 5 times. The same prompt gets copied into different places. The same document retrieval logic behaves differently depending on which front end called it. That is expensive. It is also dangerous. A reusable capability library keeps the intelligence in one controlled place. Interfaces become replaceable. Capabilities become durable. That is the architectural shift. The business should not ask, what chatbot should we build? It should ask, what reusable capability do we need, and which interfaces should be allowed to call it? Microsoft Copilot is important because it teaches business users what AI assistance feels like. That should not be dismissed. For many employees, Copilot is the first time AI becomes part of normal work instead of a separate experiment. They see AI help draft emails, summarize meetings, analyze documents, generate ideas, explain content, improve productivity inside tools they already use. That changes expectations. Once users experience that pattern, they start asking better questions. Can AI help with our internal procedures? Can it answer questions from our policies? Can it summarize our project documents? Can it help classify requests? Can it draft responses using our rules? Can it search our SharePoint content? Can it work with our SQL Server data? Can it support our department's workflow? Those are the right questions. But this is also where organizations need to be careful. Copilot is a productivity tool. A custom AI assistant capability is a business-specific system. Those are not the same thing. Copilot helps people understand the pattern of AI-assisted work. Custom capabilities apply that pattern to the company's own workflows, data, documents, business rules, permissions, and systems. That is where Microsoft-based organizations have a major opportunity. They already have much of the foundation. They often have Microsoft 365. They may have SharePoint. They may use Teams. They may have SQL Server or Azure SQL. They may have custom .NET applications. They may use Power Platform. They may have existing business processes that were never fully automated because the work required too much language interpretation, judgment, or document review. AI changes what is practical, but it does not remove the need for architecture. A custom assistant capability still needs strong typing, validation, authentication, authorization, logging, testing, monitoring, cost control, and governance. This is why .NET is a strong fit. Enterprise AI should not be treated as a collection of clever prompts. It should be treated as software. C# class libraries can hold domain logic and assistant capabilities. ASP.NET Core APIs can expose those capabilities. OpenAPI can define contracts. Azure OpenAI can provide language intelligence. Semantic kernel can help where orchestration is appropriate. SQL Server and SharePoint can provide business data and knowledge sources. Teams, Power Apps, Blazor, Chatbots, and workflows can become interfaces. Copilot introduces the expectation. Custom AI assistant capabilities turn that expectation into business-specific systems. The worst way to start is to announce that the company is going to build an AI assistant platform. That sounds strategic, but it usually creates too much scope too early. A better starting point is one business domain, one workflow, and one reusable capability. Start small enough to understand, but useful enough to matter. For example, do not start with build an HR assistant. Start with answer employee policy questions from approved handbook sections with source references and escalation guidance. Do not start with build a finance assistant. Start with summarize invoice discrepancies using invoice data, purchase order data, vendor history, and payment terms. Do not start with build an IT chatbot. Start with classify support tickets, suggest severity, summarize likely cause, and draft an initial response. Those are capabilities. They are bounded. They can be assessed, they can be prototyped, they can be reviewed by subject matter experts, they can be improved, and they can later become part of a larger assistant library. A good first capability usually has several traits. It happens frequently, it consumes too much human time. It has clear business value, it uses data or documents that are reasonably available, it has known rules or rules that can be discovered, it is low to medium risk, it allows human review, and it has a clear stakeholder who cares whether it works. That last point matters. AI capabilities need owners. A business owner defines what good looks like. A technical owner makes sure the system is secure, reliable, observable, and maintainable. Without ownership, feedback goes nowhere. Rules drift, documents become stale, users lose trust. The prototype should prove more than whether the model can generate a plausible answer. It should prove whether the organization understands the workflow well enough to build a repeatable capability. It should answer practical questions. Can we define the inputs? Can we structure the outputs? Can we identify the authoritative data? Can we enforce permissions? Can we capture useful feedback? Can we measure value? Can we explain failure? Can this move toward MVP without rebuilding everything? That is the real purpose of an AI assistant capability assessment. It is not just about finding exciting use cases. It is about identifying which capability is ready enough, valuable enough, and bounded enough to prototype. The right first capability creates a reusable pattern. Then the organization can expand deliberately. Not by chasing chatbots, not by chasing agents, but by building durable AI capabilities that can power many interfaces over time. Enterprise AI works best when the organization stops treating the chat window as the product and starts building reusable capabilities behind every interface. The companies that learn how to assess, prototype, and productionize those capabilities will be better prepared for web apps, teams, power apps, chatbots, workflow automation, and future AI agents. You can explore more practical enterprise AI resources at ain.net.com. Thanks for watching.